Hey, hi everybody. This is Achal from Flightbase. Thanks for joining in. Wish you a happy new year. This is the first webinar of 2024 and episode 6 of Doc and Roll. So we've been doing this series, and this is the sixth episode where we've been covering how to use DJI Dock in various aspects. We already had sessions with a lot of partners, different partners from across the globe. And today we are here with our close partners, UVT, where we're going to talk about ensuring robust data security practices in this webinar. So thank you for joining today. Feel free to comment from where you're joining. Are you joining from the US? Are you joining from the outside? And it'd be good to connect with you and understand what your questions are. So with me today, we have Chris Swing, founder and CEO of UVT. With us, we have Matt Reiber, VP of Projects from UVT. Hi, Chris. Hi, Matt. Welcome to the webinar.
Thanks for having us.
Great. And of course, with me, I also have Amok, who is a lead product engineer. So he's our data security expert who's going to share more about what Flightbase is doing in the data security aspects and how we are ensuring the entire data at rest, data in transit, and bunch of concepts that we are going to cover it today. So thank you so much. Few housekeeping rules. We are recording this webinar. We'll publish it again in case you happen to miss it or you have something to catch up today and you want to drop in between. You can get the recording, but we want you to stay till end and put your questions. Ask the expert. We have three great panelists on the call who can answer your questions. If you are using it for oil and gas, you're using it for defense, if you can use it for public safety, we have everybody here who can answer your questions. And of course, you can put that in the Q&A box. So you can see the Q&A box on the right side. You should be able to see that. And you can put all of that in that section, and we'd be able to answer that at end of the webinar. So great, thank you so much. With that, let me ask Chris to share the screen here. And Chris, why don't we start first with the overview of UVT, right? So we can understand a bit more about UVT, and then we'll open up some questions that I have in terms of data security.
Absolutely, Achal. Happy to do it. Just started the screen share. Let me know when you guys can see it, just to make sure that we're caught up here.
Sure. So let's just wait to pull that up. So I'll just request the backstage team to pull that up and we'll have it here. Okay.
Perfect. Looks good to me. Awesome. Thanks, Achal. Appreciate the invitation. It's always fun to do these events with Flightbase, and I still love the name Dock and Roll. That's well done by Shali and team on the marketing side. It's fantastic. Welcome, everybody. My name is Chris Fink. I am the founder and CEO here at UVT. Just a quick slide deck here to kind of go over who we are, what we do. This is just sort of a general company overview, and then as we get towards the end of it, we'll really dig into some of the doc stuff. But just a huge thanks to our friends at Flightbase, Matt, Achal, and Amog, as well as Baishali behind the scene there. Who is UVT? So I started the company in 2014. Actually started in the Orlando, Florida area, but we are now headquartered in Fayetteville, Arkansas, which is the northwest corner. We're just south of the Walmart home office, if you've ever heard of the small startup called Walmart. I started the company with the sole mission of providing first responders and frontline workers here in the US, but also across the globe, with elevated level of support and service for drone and robotics deployments. Obviously, in 2014, the landscape looked quite a bit different than it does today. And so we have been super fortunate to grow our team and grow our customer base. We now serve industries such as public safety, security, utilities, energy, a little bit of agriculture. And obviously, historically, it's been based off what we call manual operations, or your traditional drone operations, where you got a controller in your hand, drones within line of sight, you're flying and collecting data, you land it, load it up in your car, and go back into service or go back to work or back to the office. But our commitment to our customer means that we can't just stop there. And so we have built out an entire team around remote operations, as we're calling it, or dock-based operations. Again, thanks for joining us today. My name's Chris, and I also have Matt on the call. I tend to do most of the talking, both in my personal life and my work life, so I'll apologize in advance if I ramble. But thanks, Matt, for being here with us. So now you know who we are, but where are we? And so you'll see here we're all over the U.S. So we're as far west as California and as far east as New Jersey and North Carolina. I think Jared is, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but he's up here. He has Adam, who's our marketing guy, beat by just a little bit. He's just a little bit farther east there. But part of our commitment to our customers is not only operating a robust fulfillment location and HQ here in Arkansas, but we've also really leveraged our geographic presence, or I should say, built our geographic presence, leveraging relationships that we've built. And so we have sales and support staff all across the country. Like I said, all the way from west to east. Obviously, having our HQ centrally allows us to fulfill dock orders and other things coast to coast or north and south within just a few days, typically via most carriers. Our headquarters is here in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Like I said, we are in the northwest corner of the state, I should say, south central region, and we chose this location because of geographic presence. And so, like I said, we can hit each coast very quickly. We're also, like I said, in the backyard of Walmart, also Tyson and JB Hunt, and so we're able to leverage those supply chain lanes, if you will, and logistics networks to better serve our customers. We also operate a fully staffed demo site or demonstration site that is up in Fenton, Michigan. It's actually where Matt is based. And so we have sort of invested in our ability to demonstrate, test, field test, all the things. And I'll pull up at the end of this, I'll pull up a live feed that shows you one of the docks that we have deployed there, which is actually on FlightBase, of course. And so this site is dedicated completely to the demonstration and testing of remote or dock-based systems. You know, we're kind of in a weird spot right now in the industry where a lot of things are dock-based, but there's also a teleoperator presence and teleoperations presence thing that's kind of happening. And so we're finding ways to better promote that and test that. We've also begun construction of a 100-foot tower, which is, 33 meters or something. I speak American, sorry about that. But it's a 100-foot tower there, which we're going to install some BVLOS or beyond visual line of sight technology and equipment on, with the goal of getting what I would call a pretty substantial BVLOS waiver. Like I said before, industry focuses public safety, energy and utilities, and commercial security. The nice thing about using a platform like FlightBase and a dock is you can use it for just about anything that you want, right? You can deploy it anywhere, you can view it and monitor it anywhere, and you can collect that data just about anywhere in the world. And so naturally, we had to kind of narrow our focus from an industry perspective. Otherwise, we'd be just stretched too thin. Some of the brands that we work with, of course, you'll see FlightBase on here, but part of our commitment to our customers is vetting our equipment and technology, which includes the brands that we partner with and that we sell. You'll see most of the big names on here, both domestic and foreign. We've done the most in the dock world and with FlightBase with the DJI Dock 1, but the Dock 2, as we've all heard, is coming. And so we're very excited about continuing to build out not only our catalog here, but also really digging in with our friends at FlightBase and others. Additionally, we've built a whole suite of what we call fleet support services, which we call UVT ProLine. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but it just goes to show that, and whether you buy from us or you work with us or not, make sure that whoever you're dealing with, whoever you're working with to deploy these systems provides a comprehensive and turnkey solution. These are not just boxes that you can throw on a pallet or deliver through UPS and open it and hit the go button. This isn't just a DJI Mavic 3 that you put on the table or put on the ground and do the sticks down and then and go to work. You really want to make sure that whoever you work with, wherever you are in the world, is able to support you. And we do that for our customers through a few fleet support services: ProLine Pre-Flight, ProLine Support, and ProLine Fleet. ProLine Pre-Flight is pretty much what it sounds like. Every single piece of equipment that leaves our door is opened, tested, updated, tested again, maybe updated again, depending on where we are in the product cycle. FlightBase can attest that software is always changing, and with that comes firmware. And so our job is to make sure that every piece of equipment that leaves our doors to our customers is fully vetted, fully updated, tested, and really sort of a day zero deployment model. Next up, and probably most importantly, I would say, is ProLine Support. So we built ProLine Support, our ProLine Support system, to provide an always-on approach. So it is 24/7. And we also utilize an omni-channel support structure. So it's not just email, it's not just text, it's not just an online resource. It's you can reach us any way that you need to. This is included for free for public safety and first responders, but of course it's available to anybody that needs that always-on approach. Finally, UVT ProLine Fleet. So we actually started this in the manual operations side of the house because we saw people's fleets or customers' fleets growing very quickly. Back in 2014, when I started the company, I only knew of a few people that had maybe one drone and it sat in the closet because it just couldn't do a whole lot with it. Now you've got entire mature fleets of multiple types of aircraft, not just multi-rotor and fixed wing, but you've got hybrid, you've got fuel, you've got electric. All of that comes together in UVT ProLine Fleet. It's a way for us to leverage air data, which is, of course, a flight logging system, to provide that for you. And we've also offered this. We will also offer this through Flightbase for anybody that's offering Flightbase, or I should say, operating Flightbase as well. Any backend system that you want, traditionally Air Data or Flightbase, to manage your fleet, we're also there along with you to monitor it, check your flight logs, etc. Just a couple of government contracts. This is the last slide I have, and then I'll pull up the doc video feed. But this is becoming huge, at least here in the U.S. Right? That's of course where we're based. But we're finding a lot of success in leveraging government contracts. We're in a spot now, especially with doc and remote operations, where it's not just a hardware purchase. You're not just buying a Mavic. Your organization or your government agency or your administrator or your supervisor, your bean counter are approving a PO. You send that PO to us, we pick up some boxes and we deliver them, and we're done. We're seeing long-standing relationships. You need that sort of heavier touch, if you will. And government contracts are a great way to include services along with physical goods and support and on-site services, et cetera. So anybody that's out there that is able to use a US-based government contract, I would definitely take a screenshot or a photo of this. We also have it on our website in the footer, and you can visit that at www.uvt.us. So Achal, I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to pull up a video feed of our doc just as like a background, and then we can kind of chat through some of our deployments if that works for you.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds good.
Perfect. One second here, get mission control going. All right, I just reshared that screen by Shali, so you can throw that up there. Perfect. So I just wanted some kind of backdrop on here while we talk about some of this. Matt, did you want to take over? You want me to handle the talking, or Achal? I guess at this point we were going to kind of talk about some successful deployments that we've done with you guys. Just maybe field some questions.
Right. So definitely. So thank you for the overview and what a feat that is. Like how much snow it has been there.
I know. Yes.
And this thing has been standing right there. Great to see that. Right. So, of course, the topic today would be more about security. But before we jump to those questions, and I open that for Chris and Matt, it'd be good to talk about how 2023 went. What were some successful deployments? What kind of challenges the industry faced, and how did UVT overcome that and together Flightbase? So, if you can shed some light on that, be really great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's really two big hurdles we've faced in the last year deploying docs, and one is going to be environmental conditions. So really having a good understanding on how are you going to get power and internet to a location. If you don't have a hardline option, what are the other kind of secondary options that will work in different environments? And we've been fortunate enough to do a lot of testing with that with customers and on our own and through demo deployments and real world deployments. And we've learned a ton about the positives and negatives of different connectivity options and things that really are the most crucial aspects of setting yourself up for success on a dock deployment. The secondary hurdle is always how are you going to scale operations. So it's very easy, not very easy. That's an overstatement, but it's very easy to get everything together for one dock deployment. But when you look, how are you going to scale and actually ramp up those operations to take that data and make it actionable? That's where the software platform through Flightbase really shines through. One example I have to share is one of our security customers who started with a one dock deployment. Didn't have a ton of background in the docking space, but started with a one dock deployment. Thankfully, already knew what they needed connectivity-wise and power-wise, so they had things very set up on that front. But when they had success with that one dock, they said, okay, we have a very complex security system on site through the Genetec platform. How do we integrate to that? How do we scale this from one dock into ultimately several weeks later, they scaled to 5 docks. And so using the Flightbase platform allowed that scaling in a very easy, quick way. Chris, anything I missed on kind of hurdles we faced this year?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, this video feed's a perfect example of like, okay, can the dock be installed where we get a bunch of snow? Because as anybody that knows, the DJI Dock 1, the power and Ethernet come at the bottom. So does the snow build up and cause issues? Well, spoiler, it doesn't. It works just fine. This thing's been powered on for I don't even know how long, Matt, 6 months now, perfectly straight.
Yeah, May 1st of 2023. It's not been shut off since that.
Yeah,
Wow.
so it's been online for sure. And really, Matt nailed on the connectivity piece. I mean, power is one thing, but you've not only is data security just by itself important, but you got to be able to get connectivity to your dock somehow, right? The dock's not going to be of much use if it's completely remote with no internet connectivity. And then the question is, how do you do that? Most dock platforms are going to require a hardwire connection, which is just your old school Ethernet cable, like I've got plugged into my wall right here. But where does that cable go? How does it connect? In this case, at our dock site, we had to tunnel through to the building where we have a fiber connection, dedicated fiber backbone. We also have VPN backhaul to our HQ as a failover. So, we're doing that for demo purposes, right? I can only imagine what we would do if this is for critical operations. My background happens to be in IT and cybersecurity, so of course this topic interests me, and I'm sure Mo can school me on a lot of things. But it's easy to say, well, I'll just get a connection to it, but then it's like, okay, where does that go? Are you in, for example, in energy and utilities? If you're in an O&M or an operations and maintenance building, where does that cable go? It might go into a closet, into a switch. Where does that switch connect? Do the on-site people know the requirements of that? And we see that a lot when we're doing our pre-deployment checklist too. And Matt and his team do a great job of asking those questions. But some of those questions are tough to answer for our customers. How do we secure it? Does it connect to our normal network? Do we need a VLAN or a virtual network? Do we need to do IP isolation? And then more importantly is once you get all that hardwire connection and it's actually talking to the internet, how is that data secured, which is the entire reason that we're here. And to be perfectly honest, our primary reason for partnering with Flightbase, at least initially, was that SOC 2 Type 2 compliance. It was the ability to secure that data and have an actual certification behind that to say, not only do we do these things, we certify to that, and we do that every so often, whatever that sort of recertification process is. So I hope that covers it, Achal, but I know you guys are about to go into it.
Yes, I think there was some really great points. So of course Matt touched upon the environmental conditions. Then of course the integration piece was of course which is very critical for these enterprises and customers, right? To integrate with their physical security systems, right? So those were the things that we came very good, and of course the data security aspect. So I just want to segue to the section of data security, right? And just take kind of a 10,000 feet view. This industry is going rapidly fast, right? We had drones, we were flying drones manually. We would send people to fly it there. We would come back, put the data into your laptop and upload and process it or give the report. Or sometimes you would just live stream the video feed in case of some public safety applications. But now when these docking stations are coming in, right, what kind of challenges enterprises are facing, like what you little bit touched upon that just a while back, Chris, but if you could, it would be good if you can a little bit deep dive in terms of future landscape. What would be the challenges? What are the things that they need to look out for, right, when they are deploying these kind of drone docking stations, and specifically these dock settings, because you're maybe hooking up a Ethernet connection and you're talking to their internal network, right? And you need to have all the right settings there. So, what has been your experience? And of course, as you were part of IT systems, and when enterprises, and I'm sure a lot of people in audience would be enterprises who would be looking to adopt this. What are the things that they should look at, and how those things could be resolved using UVT's expertise and Flightbase?
Yeah, I mean that's the fundamental question, right? Is how can you take a brand new technology or at least a new way to deploy technology and scale that? So as far as like sort of the IT settings world, I mean, I'll keep it high level. Otherwise, I tend to get a little too nerdy. But in our instance here, so we do have this hardwired. It is going through our internal network equipment and infrastructure, but we do have it on a virtual LAN, which just means that it's not actually talking to our internal network. And it's a great way to isolate that traffic. I did that mainly because this was our first time doing it, and I kind of wanted to see what it would do. And then it's also a quick way to pull reports, right? So in the O&M example, in energy and utility, they may have to pull reports and say, okay, what kind of activity is going on? That O&M office or security office or government agency may get a call from central IT and say, hey, we're seeing something funky on there. And they're able to determine that by isolating that traffic to watch it. At the end of the day, this is an IoT device. I've got I'm an Apple HomeKit or a Apple HomePod in front of me. I got an iPhone. I got an Alexa over there. I mean, all of these are IoT devices. It all comes down to how do you connect it. There's a lot of discussion as well around drones specifically and drone data security specifically, especially here in the U.S. Although I do see that it's kind of making its way internationally. At the end of the day, guys, it doesn't matter where this stuff is made. It doesn't matter what it is. You have to secure that data. And that starts with that physical connection, or in some cases, a wireless connection to that device. So as far as the settings perspective go, I mean, it's going to depend on the organization. Main thing is monitoring your bandwidth, right? Your upload, your download speed. Not that it's necessarily going to hinder the dock's ability to perform or the drone's ability to perform, but it's going to certainly hinder and have a huge impact on your ability to interact with that data. The whole reason you would deploy this is to have an always-on perspective. On my screen over here, I can hit a button and launch that drone right now. We don't have anybody on site. We don't have DV loss, so I can't do that. But I want to know that when I hit that button, that whatever that delay is, 5 milliseconds, 1 second, 2 second, I got to know what that window is from an operational perspective, from a safety and soundness perspective. But also, if it's my job to sit here at my remote operations station to collect that data, you got to make sure you have the bandwidth available. Luckily, the dock, the DJI dock, and other docks have fail safes built in as well. And then while we're talking about fail safes and hardware, that's a huge talking point as well. And it was a huge talking point in manual operations days when all you were doing was manually flying it, which is why we started our fleet program. But right now there's a DJI Matrice 30T sitting inside of that dock. It has a pair of batteries in it. There's an HVAC system. The drone itself is in a sort of a power on state, not necessarily powered on, but it's ready to be woken up at a moment's notice. So those batteries are sitting at about 90 to 95% almost all the time. When do you swap those batteries? Can you just set it and forget it? Well, no, you can't. At some point, you got to pull those batteries out. You got to monitor them using FlightBase. You can see all that critical flight data. So you have a heads up display, just like you would for a manual fleet, except this one happens to be plugged in and powered on in what looks to be relatively heavy snow in an extremely cold environment. So hardware management, equipment management, component management, and battery management are absolutely critical when it comes to this. So it's a combination of the infrastructure that you set up. That could be the platform that it's literally sitting on. It could be the connectivity, the Ethernet. It's a combination of the IT side of the house. How do you connect it? What cloud do you use? Are you using AWS? Are you using Azure? Are you using your own on-site? What are you doing with that? How are you going to use that data? And then again, how do you access that data? Is it cloud-based? Is it local? And then how do you manage it? Once it's deployed, once it's online, once you know what cloud you're using, you have all your IT stuff ready to go. Like in this case right here, okay, what am I using this drone for? How often am I going to fly? Where am I flying? What are the conditions I'm flying in? That's the cohesive approach to remote operations. It's not just as simple as buying a drone and how am I going to go fly it and how am I going to charge the batteries at night? It's what am I doing 24/7 to ensure that that dock and that asset is ready to go and always on.
Got it. So basically what I hear is, of course, all the enterprises would have to make kind of carry a data security hygiene. There are simple steps that they need to take, right? So they can easily adopt something like a DJI dock because they're anyway using different cameras, different devices. They already have their network security layers. And the dock itself not only has drones, but also cameras and a lot of telemetry data coming from the dock as well, right? So when they are looking at something like this, there are of course certain compliances you touched upon there, right? So what kind of compliances are applicable in the US, right, which typically enterprises look for, and how can they trust those kind of compliances, or what are the things they should actually look for when they're choosing the hardware and the software combination, as well as other pointers that you would like to share in terms of managing that data security hygiene or network?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's going to depend on the organization. You've got a lot of private businesses out there like UVT where we have some flexibility and it comes down to just company standard operating procedure. You've got some other entities that are government owned and now you're subject to all the different government requirements. You've got some that may be a private business that hold government contracts or federal contracts, or they want to get involved in federal contract money. So a lot of it comes down to those specific requirements. I will say the most common ones here in the U.S. are, of course, SOC 2 and then Type 2 within that, SOC 2 Type 2 as we refer to it typically. That's sort of the industry standard. You do have some international standards that are kind of making their way over here, like ISO 27001, things like that. But SOC 2 Type 2 for us is kind of that standard. When you say those words, this company that you're looking at working with or you're buying from, they have a SOC 2 Type 2. You can kind of see them check that box off on their checklist. Others are going to get more specific. It's okay, well, this company's got a SOC 2 Type 2, but where does that data live? So because the software developer has it, what about the cloud provider? Where is that going? So then you have to really dive deep. And that's what Matt and his team do so well, is you ask those questions. Okay, so you ask for SOC 2 Type 2. What does that mean for your organization? Does it have to be the building that the server's in? And then what does that physical access look like? Is it just that you're using a cloud-based system that is SOC 2 Type 2? But I would say for me, and Matt, you're welcome to chime in. You talk to folks more than I do. I think SOC 2 Type 2 is absolutely critical. And then when you're talking about certifications as well, you've got, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure. They, of course, carry their own, but it really is up to the software developer, which is where Flightbase has invested heavily in taking the sort of native security and protections that are in place with Amazon Web Services or Azure, and building on top of that with additional levels of security to certify that Flightbase handles your data appropriately and safely, and they can show that through a SOC 2 Type 2. So those are my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
One suggestion, thing to add there is just getting your IT teams involved in the conversation from the start. I think our most successful deployments have been either when the IT owned the project and they were able to not only understand what their requirements were, but also help drive the conversation on that front. But the most beneficial and successful launches we've had is when the IT folks are involved with really right from the ground floor of helping build that platform, helping build that program, assessing the software needs and making sure that it meets their standards, and really just walking through that education of why things have been done the way they are. Most of the time when somebody gets to the finish line and looks at the Flightbase platform, they realize, hey, this is the platform we want to go with because of the safety and security and functionality. But if they're not in on that conversation all along, it can sometimes be a big hurdle for the end user to get them up to speed on that. So that's one big suggestion I would have, is just make sure that your IT folks are a part of that on the ground level, because it can really pay off in the end and make it a much smoother process for you.
Right. No, that's a really great point, Matt. And just on that, there are a lot of documentation also, right? So in last few months, we faced that where all the IT teams would like to have that documentation in place before maybe even they decide to go with one doc, right? Because ultimately they need to see the future. So it's not just about they can use it right now on a independent 4G link and do a proof of concept, but a serious enterprise is looking to adopt a bunch of them. Right. So can you share a little bit what has been the experience, and is this something which we can help assist, right? So Flightbase and UVT can help us fill that doc and ensure that all those answers are covered.
Matt, you want to take that, or you want me to?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple different models when it comes to deploying a doc. And just like with any purchase, right? You can let's talk about a fire department, for example. A fire department in the U.S., at least, you can either purchase your fire engine or you can lease your fire engine. If you purchase it, now that's a city or government-owned asset. There are certain requirements there. Same thing goes for drones and even dock hardware. There's certain models where it's dock as a service. So it's all about figuring out what your internal requirements are and how you're going to use that data. So one example is, let's say you're just using this drone as a remote security camera, and you're pulling that video feed in through a VMS or a video management system like Genetec, for example, who we've dealt with. At the end of the day, that's just a remote video camera. So you're not actually capturing any data. You just want that live feed. You may not even be recording anything. So now there's no media to record. Then your SOP comes into play. And so let's say that is your model. You want to be able to deploy a drone at a football stadium or wherever you might be, just to monitor tailgates or monitor foot traffic, ingress, egress. Your SOP states we don't capture media. We don't record anything. Maybe there's not even an SD card in the drone. So that becomes your SOP to sort of air gap that and say, hey, look, this drone is connected through maybe a 4G or a VLAN or something like that, but we're not collecting data. And so that could be one way that you scale it, is you sort of bifurcate your different dock operations, and you say, this one is going to be an always on approach. This is my DFR drone. We're recording video with this one. So maybe dock one, in that case, that one's got to be subject to XYZ. And then talking about scalability, I mean, multiple docks becomes, n to the, +2, +3, +4 degree. We've got one customer that has 5 docks installed in a row on a roof, right? Question was, how close can they be? We were like, that's a great question. We don't really know that answer. Let's go find out. So we talked to the engineers, we did some testing, and we came up with a number, and that's been working super well. So now they're able to have multiple docks on top. Then the question is, now you've got 5 sets of batteries, now you got 5 drones, now you got 5 power uplinks, now you got 5 Ethernet connections. How do you handle that? So a lot of it's going to come down to the individual department or organization needs, but you can do a lot with a little, I guess, is kind of what I'm trying to say, because this drone essentially is now deployable anywhere. You don't have to record that video. You can deploy that security camera anywhere you want. And it's just pulling in additional information. So sit yourself in a real-time crime center, for example. I was a dispatcher for many years. I'm sitting at the 911 station. I don't care that it's a drone. I mean, maybe I don't even know that it's a drone. I hit a button on my keyboard. Somebody called 911 from a house. That drone is now overhead, and that video is coming in, just like all the videos that I've got, city cameras, DOT cameras, all that kind of stuff. So it's determining how you're going to deploy this and what kind of data you're going to capture, if you're going to capture any data at all. I don't know if that answered any questions. This is where I was warning you guys about rambling. I may have just rambled.
Yeah, no, that's really great. I mean, we are already halfway through the webinar, and there's so much that we have learned so much in just last 30 minutes or so. So with that, I would like to invite Amog now to talk a little bit about flight-based piece of it. Right. So Chris, if you may just stop the screen share, and Amog, if you can pull up your screen, we can maybe start with that section where we want to cover a specific set from flight-based side. And Amog has broken down data security into multiple aspects, so we get to learn more in detail and things that we should look for. So once we have it, great. So we can see the screen. So this year, Flightbase is now announcing something called Flightbase Security Shield. So it's an entire shield once you bring your hardware, it could be a DJI dock, any other dock, it could be your CC cameras. Once you integrate and bring that into that isolation layer, we shield it all. The servers are based in the US. You can, of course, have other deployment options that we're going to talk about. But today, we're going to go deep into the cloud security aspect of it. So with that, I'll open it for Amog. And Amog, we would like to learn, when we are looking at the cyber security aspect of it, right? What are the key pillars? What are the things that we should look at specifically? Because cyber security is a broad field, right? So what are the pillars of data security or physical cyber security inspect? And if you can touch upon these in more details, that would be really great for the audience.
Yes, Achal, and thanks a lot for that introduction and questions. So the pillars of security, when we look at data security or IT in general, it will boil down to data security, which is data at rest, data in transit. Then we would obviously have network security starting all the way from the docking station, the Ethernet that is being connected to it, to what cloud providers are being used, how is network being handled within the cloud as well. So these is what I would cover under network security. We would then have operation and access, where we look at the flight-based platform that is being used. So how are end users, operators, pilots, and how are they accessing this platform? Is that access secure? Do they have certain kind of roles? And how is that kind of factoring in with the overall operation that is being done with using the flight-based platform? And lastly, we would also kind of look into application security, wherein the flight-based application itself, is it being tested for vulnerabilities? Is it being tested for any weaknesses and how frequently are these tests being done? So this is what I would broadly categorize as the pillars of security and what we will in depth cover under.
Sure. So why don't we deep dive into each and every aspect and understand a little bit more. So let's deep dive into data security and what are the key components that we look in the data security aspect.
Yes, Achal. So looking at data security, I have broadly categorized them into 3 sections. So firstly, we have data isolation. So Flightbase is a multi-tenant application that is hosted on US servers, and there, as we have multiple users, all of them running deployments and using docking stations for various applications across the globe. And that is where we take special care and have designed systems in such a way that each user's data is secured and separated, and it is accessible only through authorized usage. So that is where, yes, Achal, please go ahead.
So this is something which is, of course, expected out of the application. Right? So what measures Flightbase has taken, right, where once it's a multi-tenant solution, how that data is being segregated? Are there any architectures or things that which are required, and what are the measures that has been taken for data isolation?
So we kind of deep dive into the architectures for data isolation, make sure that all data that is flowing within different services within the Flightbase platform, it is separated on that level, as well as separated when we store operational data in our databases or other kind of cloud storage providers. So data isolation is being taken care of at each and every level where data is flowing either within the platform or into the platform or out of the platform. And that kind of an architecture is what makes Flightbase confident that data isolation is being taken care of at each of these separate levels.
Right. So maybe one of the good examples would be how you can integrate your own AWS S3 bucket or a Azure cloud bucket, right? And you can tunnel that data and directly store on that, right?
Yeah, so with such a solution, you can tunnel that data, have your the kind of drone feed, images, videos that you have captured through operations stored on your on your organization's AWS bucket or any other OSS storage, and still have that data transit being done for your organization itself, and that data isolation is taking care of that.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. And
So
what's up with encryption?
yeah, so with encryption, we are primarily looking at stored data at rest. So any kind of operational data. So we have data starting from drone telemetry to various images or videos that the drone is capturing. And all of this, when it is stored at rest, this is done using advanced encryption standards, which are kind of global standards as of this moment in the industry as well as across in the IT sector. So we are using these advanced encryption standards, AES 256, which is 256-bit encryption, and all of this data that is stored at rest in an encrypted form. So that is where we comply with these standards and regulatory requirements for data encryption at rest.
Got it.
Yeah. And finally, when we also look at recovery and redundancy, so this is something that is pretty key when it comes to data security, because when you are running large scale operations and such critical operations using drones and dogs, once in a while there are bound to be failures, and that is where you have this recovery and redundancy. So all your operations are recovered in real time. We perform monitoring on this, and we make sure that there is continuous replication and backups across multiple secure locations.
Okay. Right. And these are all secure servers where the data is becoming redundant, so it's available for backups.
Yes, sir. So that is where
Got it.
we are kind of making sure that your data is safe and secure, and even in case of any mishaps, we are able to recover in real time.
Sure. Great. So let's get to the next aspect, which is, I think, network security. So now, what is network security, and how does that differ from like the data security that we spoke about?
So I would like to take a leaf out of like what Chris initially mentioned, right? We saw the video feed of the dog in snow, and we talked a lot about how you would need a hardwired Ethernet connection that is going through probably an ISP and finally into some cloud servers. So that is where network security comes in on all of those layers. Network security, where we primarily focus on data in transit. So the DJI Dog 1, along with the drone, when it is flying in real-time operation, it is going to send out a lot of data. It is going to send out live telemetry. It is sending out live video. And with all of that, network security at Flightbase, where we ensure that we have firewalled all of our connections to these dogs, to all the remote operating command centers that are there. And through this, we make sure that through SSL encryption as well as firewalling, we are ultimately making sure that there is no unauthorized access to this data when it is in transit. We restrict malicious attackers, as well as we attempt to block communications to any unauthorized servers. So that is what we cover under network security.
Got it. Okay. Right. So let's move to the next piece.
Yeah, this is something that I'd like to kind of stress out upon as well, which is operations and access. While many might not actually link this to data security or in general when it comes to data flowing across multiple backend VMs or through the network, but this is something that becomes very critical when paired with such time-sensitive operations or critical operations with the drone and dog. So when you're looking at public safety or security, it is very important to know that who has access to the drone and dock, who can access it through the flight-based platform. And that is where we have industry-grade authentication using the OAuth 2 standards, where only people who are inside the organization would have secure access to the platform and secure access to the drone and dock to perform any kind of live operations. This is further managed than using authorization and access, where we have role-based access control. So people who are authorized, specific pilots who would only get to, let's say, launch a mission or fly the drone, and others might just probably be in a viewer position. So that kind of segregation then helps. While it helps definitely with flight safety, it also helps you with protecting your operation. So that is what we are looking at with authorization and access. Also with this, then flight-based takes care in terms of incident response and monitoring. So we are proactively monitoring and detecting any kind of failures and fail-safes. And then with that, we are swiftly responding to any security incidents as well in real time.
Right. So this is a great callback to the SOPs where Chris and Matt was talking about,
Yes.
right? Because we of course have to build and help enterprises have that kind of structure where they have secure access. Because I've read a lot of reports and incidences as well where most of it is all about where there was no proper practice followed and there was somebody accessing the data which that data was not supposed to be there with them, right? And they did not understand the criticalness of that data, and somehow that got into a personal laptop and then that got shared. So those kind of stories I've always heard about in the IT career and stuff like that. So what Amok essentially is saying is that with, of course, the OAuth 2.0, right, where if you are part of one organization, like if you have, say, you're part of flight base, you can log in with only flight base credentials and be part of that organization, right, and have that access to that sites, that drones, dogs itself, and then the RBAC, which is the role-based access. So that is where the team management or organization management come into the picture. So can you a little bit touch upon that team management and org management in flight base, where what it is and how it is done?
Yes, Ajal, sure. So that is where it comes under authorization and access, where under team management and org management, we make sure that only relevant personnel who are, let's say, members of a particular org and would be involved in the day-to-day operations with that specific drone and dock fleet have access to that data. Within that group of people, then we try to segregate them into roles: who would be pilots, who would be flying the drone, who would be the people who would have critical access to data captured by the drone, because that, based on the location, would be kind of critical and safety critical data. So that is where RBAC is coming into the picture. And again, through organizations and team management, all of this is working seamlessly within the flight-based platform.
Got it. Okay, great. So let's move to probably the application security piece of it.
Yeah, so within application security, what we are looking at is the flight-based application itself. So for that, what flight-based does is we kind of conduct regular third-party vulnerability assessments and penetration testing tests of our application and our software. We try to be continuously on top of it and fix any weaknesses, any vulnerabilities that are found, to make sure that before any kind of incident takes place or these are exploited in the real world, we are kind of fixing all of this. We also make sure that we do a complete assessment of the underlying infrastructure of our platform as well. So as Matt, I think, previously mentioned, that when we are using AWS or GCP behind the scenes, so Flightbase takes care to ensure that what all these third-party tools and vendors and cloud service providers that we are using, they are also SOC2 certified, they have the relevant security certifications, and that is how we ensure that the entire flight-based application in itself is secure and does not have any vulnerabilities or weaknesses to exploit.
Got it. Are there any like standard practices, like I've heard of OWASP and things like that, right? So there are certain things which once you met them, this is something which has considered the industry standard for application security, right?
So that's where, Achal, we try to cover internally as well as through our regular VAPT assessments, that we cover the entire OWASP top 10 guidelines mentioned under NIST as well. So these are the different kind of organizations who have set up guidelines and frameworks to measure application security, and we try to comply against all of that as well.
Great. Maybe we can move to the next slide.
Great. Yeah. So looking at these 4 pillars, these are what essentially would comprise under security. And then looking at kind of, we have also paired these up with certifications and compliances. So while through our work on all of this, we have also been, Flightbase has achieved this industry standard compliance of SOC 2 Type 2 and ISO 27001. And it is also compliant with all the GDPR rules and regulations within the UK.
Great.
So,
So we are already ISO 27000
Yeah.
compliant,
Right.
and Type 2 and GDPR. And yeah, from the perspective where this is something, just to share with the audience, this is something we started early 2022 itself, and before that, because we knew that enterprises are primarily going to adopt these docking stations, and this is going to be really super critical, right? Whether they are in North America, they're in Europe, or any part of the world, these are the standards which are widely accepted, right? And when enterprises look for these kind of compliances as shared by Chris and Matt, they are particularly looking at the SOC 2 Type 2 and now ISO 27001, and of course the GDPR compliance. Plus, of course, we engage with third-party VAPT. These are VAPT companies which kind of does penetration testing on our software, so we can get those reports, and in case they find any bugs, we're able to resolve that.
Right, Achal. And just to add on that, so finally with ISO 27001 as well as SOC 2 Type 2, we are able to reduce a lot of those hefty questionnaires that do come up when you're deploying with enterprises, and resolve a lot of those queries. And then obviously if there are any deeper questions, then obviously collaborate, and we are able to answer those as well.
Sure. So this is something which we covered from the cloud infrastructure, which is very good enough and easy to adopt, right? Let's talk about additional deployment options. We work with, of course, a lot of government, semi-government kind of organizations which require different kind of infrastructure, or even large enterprises who have invested in their own data centers. So you can speak about these 3 different additional deployment options a little bit in detail. It'd be really great.
Yes, Achal. So while we looked at data security and in general security practices that Flightbase is following when it comes to our in-cloud offering, so that is our offering where our services are deployed in an AWS in the US. We are also able to deploy our software in country cloud. So let us say we have to deploy this somewhere on a private on cloud setup. So you have your own private AWS servers where you would like this deployed, or you would like this deployed on any in-country cloud provider. So that is where Flightbase can also jump in, and we can help do that. You can also do this on-premise. So if you have your own data center where you would like to deploy the Flightbase platform and use it with the drone and dog, that is also something that we are able to support. In this setup, yes, there would be an internet connection, and we would be again looking at all those network security aspects to make sure that all the security is being dealt with. We also support an air-gapped operations setup. So air-gapped would essentially mean that the entire Flightbase platform, including anything that is connected to it, so that includes the drone, dock, any external CCTVs are there, all operation dashboards, command center, all of this is completely air-gapped, isolated from any internet access. And that is where you can expect the maximum level of data security to come in. So you would have complete control over the data flow when it comes to an air-gapped solution.
Great. So in case somebody is using an AWS GOV, right? So the government offering, so they can opt for an in-country cloud kind of offering, and we can move it there. Or somebody has already, maybe big enterprises already have Azure or Oracle or any other in-country cloud, we can deploy it on there. Plus any deployments where you are probably having a big site and have your intranet, and you don't want data to go out because the site is big enough and you do not want to rely on internet, the air gap solution can solve that problem, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Amog, on that. I think we covered a lot of ideas, and we covered the pillars. We covered about the data security, network security, operation access, and application security. So that was a really good insight. And then we also covered additional deployment options. So thank you for covering all of that. We are almost 10 minutes away to that hour. So let's quickly open that for Q&A, and that will be open for all. So I would start picking up questions from the audience, and let's take it one by one. So Ryan says that with regard to some extreme remote situations, would something like Starlink be sufficient connectivity for a drone dock? This is more related to the networking component of it, not data security. But any thoughts, Matt, Chris, from your side? Have you used already Starlink? I can share my perspective a little bit. Ramo can share later, but it'd be good to hear from you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from a remote perspective, Starlink has outshined cellular quite often right now, and really is our go-to if there's not an ability to get a hardline connection from a local ISP. So Starlink definitely is a preferred option as it stands today. But even Starlink at times has its struggles and difficulties. So making sure to understand your location and vetting that solution. Unfortunately, with connectivity, there's not a one size that fits all approach. And sometimes cellular still does outshine Starlink, but oftentimes Starlink does do just really wonderful things. So definitely something you'll want to test out and fully vet before you rely on that for connectivity.
Mm-hmm. Right. We have few customers in Latin America where they're using Starlink very successful. Of course, there are some drawbacks considering the bandwidth issues, right? Which does not compromises your flight operations, but of course lower downs your video quality. So in case you're in the operations and looking to read a license plate and you're not getting that quality, that would affect it there. But of course, if the drone is recording on board and then later you have that video, you can make up for that later. So yeah, of course, I think Starlink is also improving. So once as it improves the bandwidth, it will be as good as internet connection. But today, if you're looking to deploy it in a remote area, that's the best option, I think, to go forward with the docking station.
Yeah, I think so. I was going to add too, there's two considerations. One would be video latency. So, if you are using this in a critical environment and you need that almost immediate, sub-second latency, that's one consideration, either with cellular or Starlink. The other thing too is natively I should just say natively, when you fly the DJI dock and you collect media, that media then automatically gets recorded in the SD card on the drone, moves to the dock, and then from the dock it goes to the cloud. So not only do you have a bandwidth consideration just with your real-time video and remote viewing, but you've got a pretty large burden if you're collecting a lot of media while you're on that flight, videos and still photos and such. You're going to be eating away at any data caps either on the cell side or Starlink. I think Starlink does have some ways around that, and I think it's like a terabyte. It's kind of your default budget, if you will, or your cap. So those are just two considerations: would be latency, and then sort of mitigating your data cap by only capturing content that you need.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. Great. So let's move to the next question. This is something which is not related to, again, data security, but since we are the topic of dock and roll, this is more about the snow operations. But so the question is that how do we manage when there is snow on the dock? We experience that the snow falls when the dock opens directly on the drone. Any thoughts on that, Matt, on that, how to overcome that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the DJI Dock 1 does have a high heat option, which you can keep that dock running at a higher heat. For long-term deployments and long-term durations, that's not recommended. And in really cold environments, once snow has built up, it's not going to be able to clear it, but it does have a fighting chance at keeping some of that snow off there. We don't recommend somebody run that in a high heat capacity just because it puts a huge stress on the HVAC unit on the dock, but they do have that option. At our demo site, we're still operating under visual line of sight operations while we await some beyond visual line of sight and detect and avoid technology. So for us, it's not a big deal because we have a pilot around that can do that clearing of the dock. A lot of our customers, we have one up in upstate New York who's really experienced some difficulties with that in the last couple of weeks, but they're sending somebody up to the roof to clear it off when that snow starts to build up. I will say the rumors about the next generation dock do have some answers to that too, so we are really excited to hear and see what's coming down the pipe on that potential solution with the next generation of DJI Dock.
Right. I think DJ has already taken that kind of feedback, and the rumor dog that is out there should be able to resolve that really well. Awesome. So next question is from Scott. Scott says, how are the software and hardware manufacturers set to handle security vulnerabilities as they are discovered? Great question. So Amok, any thoughts on that?
Yes. So from a software side, yes, as and when security vulnerabilities are discovered, we primarily look at two things here. So firstly is, are we actively looking to find these vulnerabilities? And that is where at Flightbase, we are doing this with an in-house team, as well as regularly engaging with third-party VAPT partners or companies who are skilled at doing this vulnerability and penetration testing. So that is the first part, where we are actively looking to seek out these vulnerabilities, and once we have them, then we are also prioritizing them, fixing them as and when they are discovered. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks on that. Let me pick up another one. So just coming on those thoughts, Chris and Matt, have you kind of come across like any instance where drone security was breached or compromised, and what impact did it have on organization, and how do you overcome anything you have come across in previous roles that you have been?
Yeah, I mean, so far, we had this discussion a lot, talking about drone data security and the political environment here in the U.S. I mean, so far, to my knowledge, and I think the industry's knowledge, there's been no evidence of any breaches historically related to drones, or even the media that's collected by drones. Obviously, that media may be uploaded to a Dropbox or something else that is out of our control and out of our purview, but I'm not aware of anything. And I'd also hit really quick, I know we got one more question and we're almost up on time, but Scott's second question there about our companies proactively seeking to fix vulnerabilities before they can be exploited through bug hunting or the programs. Obviously, Flightbase, you do a great job of that, but DJI specifically also has a bug bounty program. It's on their website, security.dji.com. So Flightbase is not the only one in this dock world that is actively trying to find these issues. So anybody questioning the data security of DJI, even if you don't have Flightbase, I encourage you to try to hack their system and find the bugs, because they do have a bug bounty program. So a lot of proactive activity, I guess, a lot of proactivity in this industry related to data security.
Great insight, Chris, on that. I think we're already up on the time, and for this, we can take up just one more question here. Or maybe a couple of them. One is, of course, a quick question on federal grants and buying these drones, right, at the data security aspect of it. Any quick thoughts on that, Chris or Matt? You'd like to take that up and quickly answer that question?
Yeah, we have this conversation all the time. So there are a ton of exemptions right now. So the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 24 here in the U.S. was passed, and unfortunately, a heavily modified ASDA, American Security Drone Act, was passed as part of that. Thankfully, due to massive pushback from industry and first responders, there is a laundry list of exemptions in there. So for city and local governments, I should say, anything state and below, the ASDA really has no impact on you. For those of you that are looking for federal contracts, it's going to come down to how you're operating, what specific bucket your federal money came from. Anything defense related is going to be a challenge, but outside of that, when I say defense, I mean military, military base security, things like that. Just about anything else, there's going to be a way to get an exemption on there. We do have some resources internally. We're happy to provide those. I would not be super concerned with it. Just ask a lot of questions. And it goes to Matt's point earlier, get your IT people involved right away and ask what those considerations are going to be, as well as your administration too, depending on funding.
Great. Thank you for that. And let me quickly answer one more question that's more particular to Flightbase. So Finn has a question where integration with Cassia G. The understanding is the drone cannot automatically respond to incoming manned aircraft to avoid a collision risk currently. Is there something interest of Flightbase? So we have something called DA Exchange, which we are now bringing it shape. We have already launched it with integration with Iris Cassia G. So the framework that we now have is as soon as we detect anything, be it from Cassia G or any other sensors, detect and avoid sensor, we can run a maneuver which is called go to safe altitude. So that is GTSA. So you can configure a safe altitude based on your topography, the environment you're in, where are the power lines, where are the buildings, and the drone can automatically descend to that particular altitude. So that is something that we have found a really simple way. And this has also worked with few of our customers in the US to get FAA approvals, because that is something where once they detect something, they would like to bring the drone to a safe altitude. So it is not something flying where it has an air risk of just colliding with anything which is in the air. So that is something which we are already introducing. There is a dedicated webinar which will be coming soon on DA Exchange. So feel free to tune into the LinkedIn page that we have, and we'll be talking about that really soon in the coming months. Great, sounds good. I think we are already above the time. We just have one more thing which is coming up, and I want to just pitch that, which is NestGen. So this is coming up on 24th of February. So we are on the third season now, the third edition. It is growing bigger and bigger every year. Last year we had 2,700 people joining from 80 countries. This year we have already crossed thousands of registration there, 1,000 plus registration. So we're anticipating a lot of people joining in. And feel free to scan this or go to flightways.com/nestgen to grab your seat. This is on Saturday this time, so we have plans that you can just NestGen and chill on Saturday, so you don't have any other work to office. Otherwise, there is always calls, or you have to run through and attend a customer meeting. So you can see it on your phone, or you can go and watch a football match and still see it on phone and tune in. So this is something which we are doing on 24th of February. So feel free to scan the QR code or go to flightways.com/nestgen. With that, thank you so much, Matt and Chris, for your time. That was really great, and some key insights covered. I'm sure this would be really helpful for the audience, as well as anybody who would listen to the recording of it. We will, of course, release a lot of clips so people can have bite-sized content from here as well. And of course, that will be shared through Flightbase and UVT LinkedIn pages, right? So people can understand a bit more. Any other thoughts, really quick closing thoughts, Chris and Matt, on this, and what do we see 2024 all about?
Yeah, no, thank you guys very much for your time. It's great to always do these events with Flightbase. I think 2024 is going to be the year of docs and remote operations. I think the question is who's going to be the front runner from a hardware perspective. Obviously, we have big things in store for Flightbase with our customers, and just more information about us can be found at www.uvt.us. You can also find us on LinkedIn as well, as Achal mentioned. So thank you guys for being here, and thanks for having us.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, Matt, any last thoughts?
Just thank you guys for having us. We appreciated the time. We look forward to talking to everybody very soon.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Amok, for all your valuable insights. Really good to learn from somebody who is managing the product and directly coming from the oven, right, what Flightbase is working on it. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time. And thank you, audience, for your valuable time. I hope this was useful, and see you in the next episode of Doc and Roll. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.